Welcome to the Truth Uprooted podcast, where we discuss and solve real life issues faced by Christians by applying the raw and undiluted truth of God. As we say, it's a real talk for a straight walk. I'm your host, Vivian Brown, and with me is our podcast pastor, Reverend Antonio Mitchell.
Truth uprooted, nothing off the table, every topic included. Give it to you raw, unfiltered and diluted. Here to give the voice to the silent, muted. Taking the uncomfortable and breaking it down. Using God's word, thanks for sticking around. You are now tuned into Truth Uprooted. Real talk for a straight walk.
Marriage is the most honorable institution ever created. It is filled with happiness, highs, lows, you name it. But the challenges that come with being married is something else. And oftentimes we're in this fairy tale world. And we're going to be talking about that today. So today's topic is reality versus expectations in marriage. And joining in this discussion, we have, of course, our resident podcast pastor, Bishop Antonio Mitchell. Big up yourself. Big up yourself. And also, I'm going to dub her as our resident guest. That's Minister Nicole Kenwood Brown. And she's, of course, the founder and leader of the Label Free Wives movement. We're going to get into these things. And I'm pretty sure that in a previous episode, we did talk about it just a little bit. But this session is definitely dedicated to marriage. So, Bishop, lay the biblical model of marriage for us before we get into the whole, expectations that we have.
Thank you so much. It's good to see you again, Evangelist Doctor Brown, and of course,
always a pleasure.
All right, so marriage, based on its origin, the first marriage officer was God Himself, who instituted marriage. Now, the whole idea of marriage, according to Genesis 1 and the verse 26 through to 28, God said, "Let us make man our own image and likeness." And the scripture says He created us to have dominion over everything on the earth. So in God's mind, He wanted to have an extended family here on the earth and to give them delegated authority to have kingdom rule in every area of life. So family, in our careers, a church, and the list goes on. Now, before you can have a extended family, which is God's original intent, God of course wanted that institution to start from the foundation of male and female.
Yes.
Getting married. Yes, male and female getting married. And to procreate and to have offspring. And then now we have a family. That's the idea that God wanted. Now I just want to underscore before we get to the expectations, that before we can talk about passion and happiness, because most people get married for that, we first have to deal with the purpose. Alright? So God created marriage to reflect the triune God. The triune God, which are three different persons who are one. Eliom, God in Himself, for Himself, by Himself. And they are so in sync. They are so, behold, Israel, the Lord our God is one. Alright, and that's the kind of idea now that God wanted for marriages, for two persons coming together to become one that will now bring Him glory here in the earth. That's the original intent. So before we can talk about the benefits of marriage in terms of passion and happiness that a lot of people get married for, and those are secondary,
Yes.
we first have to understand the original intent, the purpose for which God made marriage, to bring him glory.
Okay. So I'm going to say, therefore, that if the purpose is wrong for the couple, then, and we have our own expectations, we will get into some problems here. So, Minister, can you just share with us some of those expectations that we have? Certainly for me, when I was getting married at age 20, yes,
Wow.
at age 20, I thought that I was going to ride off into the sunset. And every morning we would get up and we would exercise together. Yeah, it was all about self, right? So let us look at that, in a little bit.
I too was along that similar line.
Yes.
Thinking that, because the truth is, our orientation of marriage, where we come up in our society, and it's general because everybody is gravitating to the same place, and that is media. And most of our expectations for marriage and life in general is cultured through that medium. So naturally riding off into the sunset, if you're coming from the era like us, then it's the Little House on the Prairie.
Exactly, right.
White picket fence, the perfect setup. And it's not just us, but I think that it's true for a lot of persons who enter marriage. And I'll ask wives when we're in different sessions, do you think your marriage was created to make you happy? And of course, resoundingly.
Yes.
Of course. You're supposed to, it's meant for your happiness. But God's intention, as Rev rightly said, is not so. And I was reflecting yesterday. It was just yesterday I was looking back and I was reading something and it was talking about, your wedding dress and preparing for marriage. And I'm like, where's my wedding dress? And one day, as I remember, lo and behold, one of my expectations weren't being met, and of course, God wasn't answering my prayer either. And me throw my wedding dress on the garbage truck. It's a way in which I could have rebelled the most against what was happening in marriage and my experiences, when measured against my expectations. Because my husband was supposed to have met certain needs. He was meeting those needs. God was supposed to make my husband cause those needs, to be met, and God wasn't showing up as he should. And it can be a real eye opener for different persons.
Yeah.
Depending on what you come into. And because marriage is for a lot of persons, the purpose is pleasure. We don't a lot of times wait on God's directives because it is for pleasure.
Yes.
We lean into the direction of where seeking our own personal pleasure.
Yeah.
And in the midst of it, then we find that it falls apart, and the fantasy, the expectation, the fairy tale, all of that comes crashing down. And these are some of the things that underscore, right? The expectations versus what the reality of marriage is. And I'm certain we're going
right into that now.
We're going into what those are.
Yeah.
So your expectations are basically what you believe it's supposed to be. What you from your own orientation, your own culture, your own upbringing, what you believe marriage is supposed to be for you, is supposed to provide for you. And sometimes not necessarily taking into consideration what you are supposed to bring to the table, but mostly what your spouse is to give back to you.
Wow.
Yeah.
So running right into the realities, My reality is that, should I speak about my reality? It's rooted. So it's not what I expected, to be honest. So my reality, it has slapped me in the face twofold. What's your reality?
I'm glad you asked. So I was raised in the church. I had a love for the word from very, very, very early. I knew I wanted to become a pastor. So I was very word hungry, still is. And the reason why I raised that is because I would have no interface with God through scriptures. I would not miss Bible studies. And so my expectation of a wife was not the Beyonce type. I appreciate beauty, but I'm never ever after the extrinsic. I was always after the substance or the essence of the individual. And it so happened that my wife, when I met her, I got married to her without a job, without a career. Beautiful girl, but she had a wonderful spirit. So I get all the things that I was not necessarily going for. She's beautiful, nice body, that kind of thing. But those for me were secondary. My expectation was somebody who knows how to worship, how to pray, somebody who has 6 or 7 sense in terms of discernment to help me become a better man. All right. So when I met my wife, we went back to college, and there were teachers. I had girls who were, and I'm not being self-absorbed. I don't think much of myself, but I had girls who were throwing themselves at me, who had careers, and none of them did anything for me in my spirit, because that was not my expectation. It was not after the extrinsics. It was after that which is coming from within.
Because there's also the measure of you getting what you weren't expecting in a good way as well. It's not just a negative.
Exactly, that's true.
There's also the Bible speaking about 2 being better than 1. That which it doesn't matter how in quotes terrible your marriage is, you know that there's this one person that you can pick up the phone and call. If you are in a jam, you know, if nobody else shows up, that is your people. That person is going to show up for you. They might not show up with, you know, the best attitude and all, depending on what your dynamic is. But there's also that. There is where, if you measure for some persons who are coming out of a single parent setup versus having a partner in that, there are things that you will experience that you weren't expecting necessarily because you weren't exposed to it. So there are, we're not here saying that expectations is all bad. Right. The realities that you will experience is all bad. But we are, saying that you must also understand that based on the fact that we are believers and we are coming from that place, the Lord supplies our needs, not necessarily our expectations, not necessarily our desires.
Yes.
He will give you in a spouse what He knows you will need, not necessarily what you desire. Right? And so those are some of the things that we aren't taught up front. We aren't schooled in to say, look, I was presenting on Saturday on, you know, hygiene and all of these things, and they insisted that I would do self-care and hygiene because so many husbands weren't expecting that the same hot girl Coca-Cola bottle shape, hair nice, all of these things would be coming into the bed, not bathing for 2 days, no shaving taking place, no, you know, all of these things. They weren't expecting this.
Yes.
But you get into this place of marriage, you have the multiple children, you have the responsibilities of running the home, and it can be, especially if you're not getting the support of your spouse. Pastor, I'm preaching now, but we go with you.
I'm not.
It's a real thing though.
You know, it really can get to that. It can get to where you are not priority. And so men are a lot of times not very understanding in this regard, recognizing the burden, the transitioning, especially over time when you're going for 20, so many years, there would have been so many changes that would have taken place. And all of these things, you have to know that, expect that our breasts will sag. Expect that hard erection that you're accustomed to waking up in the morning and seeing is not always going to be standing at attention. You're going to win. It's going to win.
The devil is a liar.
Expect
Praise the Lord.
The children that you want, the multiple children, she's going to gain some weight.
Exactly.
And if you want her to maintain that figure, you're going to have to ensure that provision is made for the proper dieting and exercise is in place in terms of the gym. So, in order to sustain some of the expectations too, then there are sacrifices that will have to be made. But I'm itching to go into the old matter of the scripture, the
Go
first
right into it.
Corinthians,
No.
the
Go right
first
into it,
Corinthians
First
scripture,
Corinthians
what Rev
13.
is
Yeah,
going to.
you see, we raised earlier of the purpose before the secondary passion and happiness and stuff like that. We can now move from the origin in terms of what the original purpose to the roles.
Mhm.
Now, and that's the reason why a lot of women get a rowdy. And I must say, as a male myself, counseling with couples,
Mhm.
a lot of ladies, it's almost like they run up into a brick wall.
Yeah.
And they say, my God, this is not what I imagine. Husbands too, but most for the wives.
Mhm.
But wives for the most part. Now, if you are going to choose a husband prayerfully, wisely, you need to look for a man who will cultivate you. Adam, when before he got woman, Adam had work. He had worship in the Garden of Eden. He had work. He was cultivating the garden. All right. You need a man in your life, woman, who can cultivate you. So if your breast gets sag, love rings develop, you need a man to help you in terms of eating properly, go walk with you, motivate and allow you to understand that, listen there, it's not just about you doing all these chores. And a lot of females now get married and feel like they are mates.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they don't even feel sexy enough.
Mhm.
Because after you have done cleaning the house all day and to cook, by the time the man wants you, you're webbed.
Of course.
See what I'm saying? So we need men who are able to cultivate women. When I got married to my wife, as I said, she never have on her subjects. So we talk about these things now, and she be watching this podcast. She never have subjects.
Right.
I sent her back to school.
Mhm.
I cultivated the wife that I want. And a lot of us, be it male, female in the marriage, we very often want ready-made spouse. And not necessarily to build a life with the person. See what I'm saying? Because, we have some warped expectations.
Mhm.
The man must come with a certain bank account.
Especially now.
Oh yeah.
in
Sometimes
today's-
God does give us the
Yeah.
idea. You want a table and God give you the idea of planting. There's a tree, cut it down. You have to know lumber it. You have to know dry it. You know have to carry it to the workshop after the process for the carpenter to build the table or the chair that you want. So it's not a marriage. I'm married now for 17 years, counting. Is not a ready-made thing.
Absolutely not.
Marriage was made in heaven, Mr. Barry Davidson, I quote, says, marriage was made in heaven. That's heaven, but it is lived
Lived
on
on
earth.
earth.
Oh.
Yeah.
We have to work it out
So
here.
all of the things
We
that
have to
are
cultivate the marriage.
we will be impacting on it. And as we would have started off by talking about the model, and yes, Rev outlined what the general model, but the whole love model,
Yeah.
and as found in the First Corinthians 13 scripture,
Yes.
and all of that. And the irony is, I was looking at two different versions, and in the King James, one of what it opens with is long. Love suffers long and is kind. It's not like in the NIV or the love suffers long. Charity, it uses charity suffers long and is kind. Right? So it continues into, so it's not suffering for those persons who are not benefiting from the better parts of marriage or feeling as if they're going through a very, very hard time.
Yeah.
Your expectations are not being met in any way, in a pleasant way, that is. And it says, and is kind. Even in the suffering, God is saying, be a believer. So, as we said before, we a lot of times make a choice as it relates to a spouse based on our own
Yeah.
needs and desires, not necessarily on what the word says or the what is outlined in scripture as to the model man,
Yes.
right? The work and the worship. So we know that a man is industrious. He's always striving to provide for the family, and his heart is towards God. And if a man's heart is towards God, then it means naturally he will be walking in step with scripture.
Yeah.
But the thing is, a lot of women are not exposed to that kind of man. I mean, it's general, but in our culture in particular,
Yeah.
a lot of us are not exposed. Either the father is not there, so we never see what a good man looks like, any at all. And the men that we are exposed to, and the truth is, you are going to be attracted to what you know. You are going to want, and if we're going to a more, if we're going to the whole spiritual dynamics of it, it's a familiar spirit that is attached to us. So many bloodlines that causes you. So it will come to when you are thinking about marriage and having those expectations. Yes, you can lay them out and all, but it's going to be taking a stripping and a processing where you're willing to submit your desires, where you're willing to submit your expectations to God, to say, Lord, this is what I would prefer in a spouse. This is what I would prefer in marriage.
So can I ask a question, please? You're talking here a lot of you know, I like it sounds to me like you're saying that with that said, all of what you just said, that seemingly a lot of people have made mistakes.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And today they have to just be living with the choice.
And living with the choice for many different reasons. Like I personally provide support for those women.
So question. So you agree to that. The question is that. So what are we saying then? That we have a lot of people who are in their marriages, in church, who it was not God who ordained that marriage.
A lot. And
let
we're in this room, so let's interact in this room. Sissy got married at 20. She would have had very little idea of how she would have evolved and how the spouse that she took on at that time would be able to complement the life that she would be living, the call that is on her life, and all of these things, right? So she would be coming from, especially growing up in the church. You want to marry, then you don't want to burn. You want to have sex. You want to have all the perks of going home with somebody. You want all of these things. And so you will find that as you grow, not a lot of our men are aggressive in terms of personal growth and ensuring that they're in the word and ensuring that they're building a legacy and making an impact. You see that a lot more where women are concerned. And so, you know, we'll at times talk about being unequally yoked and it's not marrying an unbeliever, but we have unbelievers in the church. We have unbelievers who are there that our women gravitate to and get married to. And you take home this man, and when you tear off the plastic, here comes a demon. Here comes,
oh my God!
Here comes family altars. Here comes generational. Here comes all of these things. So yes, you know, working closely with these women, providing support for women who are in difficult marriages, you find that, yes, there are mistakes that have been made, whether you were influenced by your church community, you were influenced by what was happening in your physical body, your immaturity. You're influenced by his charm and his, you know, his
tall, dark,
everything,
and handsome.
right? So all of these things, all of the different things that you've been told that you're getting old, that you need to catch up, and whatever the influence is, I don't think that the majority of our marriages, based on what I've experienced, has been made from a prayerful,
I wanted to bring that up.
Holy Spirit directed place where two persons are running together with the mandate of the kingdom and understanding that you don't just have children and they just grow up like weeds, but we are being intentional about ensuring that we're passing on something, a home, a legacy. You know, we're creating the what will be the kingdom on the earth when we pass on all of these things. And so what you get instead is opposition in the home. You're co-parenting, and one parent said, go to bed 9 o'clock. I'm going to pray too much. God, all of these things happening in the house because you weren't directed, you weren't cultured to recognize it. God don't say go. It's
Yeah.
okay to stay. It's okay to wait. And I'd say to those persons who are prepping for marriage,
Yes.
who are desiring marriage, it is so very, I mean, you might not get thunder roll and lightning flash and God said, this is the one. But, realistically sitting down now and
Yeah.
taking your pen and paper and say, look here, I don't want any man after 10 years in belly big. I don't want a man with a little penis. I don't want a man with can't cook. Write down all of the fantasies.
Yeah.
Write down all of the great, what draw him if you want. Create an avatar of your ideal man. But when you're through with all of that, be realistic, understanding that we are existing in a space where persons are imperfect. You yourself is imperfect.
Yeah.
Very
So,
But yet we want perfection.
Very good.
Precisely.
So one other thing that you said in terms of opposition. So I was working with some I kind of flow this one in terms of the origin, in terms of purpose, the roles, and then now the opposition within relationship. There's an unrealistic expectation that you're going to live happily ever after. That's a lie from where.
the deepest, darkest
The
spot.
deepest, darkest lie.
So I'm happy you said
There's
that.
a question.
Can you just jump in your response just to talk about coping mechanisms as well? Include that in your response.
All right, let us just say, so I'm talking about now the opposition. Conflict is inevitable.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We have two different people coming from two different backgrounds, so expect problem. There's a question I asked at a minister's retreat. Are you sure that you got married to be happier or holier?
Boy.
Your spouse does not necessarily make you happier all the time.
At the cross.
But your spouse so very often reveal even your incapacities, your handicaps, your weaknesses, for you to be a better work on yourself. Self-control, some things you want to tell your partner. As a believer, you have to learn to soft answer it out, that turn away wrath and give us word that stir anger. You have to learn to expect for there to be conflicts.
Trouble in the camp.
Two different partners.
Yeah, and expect that there will be some problems in your marriage that you'll never solve.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There are some things that you will never,
Very
like you will just have to tell yourself, say, look here, this a brother I will never cook, and that is it.
Yeah.
So if I can't cook a KFC, I do it. Cause he will never is unwilling.
Yeah.
He will never be domesticated.
Very good.
So stop walk around
Stress out yourself.
and tell him about Pansy, Mr. Pansy,
Your
and
mother.
talk loud and grumble. And Pansy husband is say, boy, because no.
You only killing the
Fancy.
system.
Just
That's
quit.
stress.
Only
You know what I'm
killing
saying? Just understand that there are some things that you will have to live with.
Live with.
Understand also that
Powerful.
your spouse will never be able to meet all of your needs.
Yeah.
So you understand upfront what those needs are. What are you going into marriage expecting in terms of, and if you have out of 10, if he meets 5, that not so bad. If you find somebody who come up even more, but the fact is, nobody, and especially not your spouse, is able to meet it's God who meets needs. He will use your spouse as one of the sources to meet those needs and identify other sources, healthy sources.
Yeah.
So you're not allowed a work wife. You're not allowed a work husband. You're not allowed a church wife. You're not allowed a church husband. If you want somebody to yap, go talk to good, godly girlfriends. If you want somebody's shoulder to lean on, if you have a good mother-in-law, good sister-in-laws, or your own relatives. So understand that your husband, and another thing, even your financial needs. We grew up in Jamaica and we love money. Money, yeah. But the fact is that we're accustomed to men being the providers and they're supposed to. But understand also that God does not necessarily, because where God is taking you and how He's grooming you he may want you to be that person that carries the weight of certain things. And you have to tap into your own unique self and understand from God who you are. What do you have to offer? What's the value that you bring to this space? And one of the things that I learned recently, and I was grappling, and you said me throw on the wedding dress. It was like that, like my flesh had act up so much. And I had to, one of the things that Lord really revealed, and it's more recent, is how my assignment as it relates to my marriage. And I was completely blown away.
Wow.
Like I had to go back now, like I'm doing foundational work. And even because I was rebelling so much,
How long are you married?
12 years.
Are you doing foundational work?
Foundational work because I was wanting so much, demanding so much from my spouse, not recognizing that I was assigned to this, not just this man. I was assigned to this bloodline. I was assigned to break curses. See, I'm quiet over there. Say I was assigned, and so these are some of the things. History. I got married to an entire. So when the Lord begins to talk to me about Santeria, and we're looking at the Masonic Lodge, and we're looking at witchcraft, and we're looking at different altars. And so, me not have no time for it.
I got goosey a while ago.
When last you have sex, or when last I have to be in warfare, because the attacks are sometimes very, very literal, based on, and because sometimes of the grooming and the fashioning, the Lord wants to take you to a place where He's taking you beyond your marriage, and your marriage is the place where He's fashioning you for that platform and to reach others. So we have to be mindful. Well, we have to come back to this discussion. But we have to be very, very mindful that marriage is, and I'm adamant, and I'm on this move. And as I said to you earlier, we're working on starting with ladies at 15. Yeah. That initiative, the Young Wives Initiative, because marriage is being threatened in this time of life, and the enemy is amplifying those things that are supposed to be norms in marriage. He's amplifying those things and allowing Christians to believe that you just get up and you just walk. It's a covenant.
Woman of God, let me just say, we need a part two. Premarital counseling, very, very important. Paul said that marriage is,
and not the 3 sessions.
Not the 3 sessions. Should not be entered into.
I had one session.
What?
Oh Lord,
I had one session.
Not,
can I just say what my one session was about?
Yeah.
The pastor said to me, Sister Vivian, listen to your husband.
Stop it.
I ain't kidding you.
It must not be entered into
unadvisedly.
But prayerfully, wisely. And I love that initiative from 15, where you are training young ladies to look forward to what they must expect, what they must become in marriages. I am submitting, as I listened to you earlier, that the main opposition to marriages, when you look in the Garden of Eden, it was the devil. All right? He is the enemy behind every marriage, wanting marriages to fail and to be on the rocks and you get up every day. And we're not saying that you must not be happy. And we want you to be happy. All right? But we want to first understand. So what is the will of God for our lives? As the one of God says, understand yourself. And one of the deception that with the enemy, and because he's so crafty, in the nucleus, in terms of having these false expectations. He must be this height. She must have this body. Listen to me. Most of the time, our criteria is not God's criteria. Go into relationships. Open yourself to the mind of God. Be very prayerful. Be very perceptive, and don't allow the flesh to dictate to you who you get married to. Because I'm telling you, marriage is not for 3 years. I heard Bishop T.D. Jakes says It was after 5 years. He started under 5 years.
Yeah.
He started understanding his wife. After 5
You
years.
can imagine the
That's
hassles.
And you just said it is after 12 years that you now have to retreat a bit and you are now doing foundational work. Because there are some things that we should have been doing from the initial stage.
Yeah.
First of all, be very prayerful about who you want in your life. Be very prayerful about it and don't just accept anything that comes.
And be prayerful about who you are, because
Yes.
you aren't able to necessarily get that good man unless you have the qualities
Yes.
to not just attract a good man. Because you're walking around and because your body cute and your teeth nice and your hair long and all of these things, you smell good, of course. But there is that man that you're wanting. You're wanting a leader. You're wanting a man who is understanding, who has a vision. You're wanting a godly man who knows how to lay his hands on you and pray. You want a man who has done the foundational work too.
Yeah.
Addressed some things in his bloodline and understanding that he doesn't want to. You want somebody to partner with you to break generational curses. And unless you have done that work with all of your broken, everybody has something that they're carrying.
Yeah.
So if you are coming full-fledged with all of that and he's coming full-fledged with all of his baggages and you come, it's an explosion that you are going to be creating in that space, and you're not just causing separation for you. There's all of the stresses that comes with it. But then there will be children in the mix who will not know their identity because their parents weren't clear on who they are and where they're going and why they had children and what is the assignment for these children. All of those things are necessary. You won't understand either what your roles are as individuals coming into the marriage and the contribution that you're supposed to make. And as a couple, what is your assignment?
Yeah.
Where is God sending you and to whom? And so all of these things are very, very important. That's why I would tell you not to rush. There's no need to rush. Because if you have a sex problem, you need to deal with it single.
So watch this, man. I'm going to hand it to you. But the truth is, you find that a lot of persons come into marriage, and I hate this concept. Correct me if I'm wrong. I am not half of a person.
Oh no, there's no 50
Where's the next
marriage.
half?
Oh no.
And
Where's the next half? I am not half of a man. I'm 5 feet 5, but I'm a full man. The point I'm making is, we must so work on ourselves prior to marriage.
Yes.
That when you come to marriage, you come to the marriage, to the table, 100% whole person, not perfect.
Oh no.
We're not expecting no perfect person. But you come to the table understanding, I come with my happiness. Yes. I come with a vision. I come with purpose. I come with an assignment on my life. Can you imagine if both parties come together? We don't know what to do to ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we came to the table
Fully loaded.
as two satisfied singles who have now found the spouse that will now enhance who we are.
Precisely.
That's what. And so sometimes we come into the relationship with unrealistic expectation. Him not making me happy, and she not making me happy. No, you need to come to the table happy. And the
And
person
you
now
create
add
deeper happiness
Yes,
together.
yes.
You know,
yes.
all of these
all
things.
the elements.
So naturally some things are going to be worked out in the space of marriage. There will be, so make room for growth. So even though you're coming, as whole as possible, some things, as I said before, is when your spouse step on your toe, you know your ability for husband will still underline. So,
You mean
right?
in the church?
So, so all of these things, you would know that you have
You don't look like somebody who said things.
Don't make him joy.
No,
What you hear?
no.
Don't make him joy.
Not your teacher, you're anointed and appointed.
We need a part 2 to this. We need a part 2.
Right.
I'm going to allow you, Minister, just to wrap up. So both of you would have given some advice already to the newly couples. Not couple yet, but persons who are planning to get married. So we have those down. But just to put a little bit more closed on it, so we can close off this segment. As I said, we may need to do a part 2 because I think there's so much more that we could talk about. So I'm giving you that opportunity now, and to also give us some details on the Label Free Wives movement, your social media, how we can get in touch with you, and some of those things.
Right.
As we wrap up.
As we said, we've said all that we've said, and there's so much more that we can say and could have said today. But we're saying, if you, whatever your expectations were, and wherever you are now, right? And we would have pointed out that, and we did not do a formal survey. We're just saying all of this based on where we are, that there are a lot of persons who would have made mistakes as far as marriage is concerned. How do you cope going forward? Begin to do the work as far as you are concerned. I'll tell wives who ask me time and time again, why do I have to do all this work while my spouse just lives? Well, you were who you were when you attracted this man to you. If you want a different man, whether a different man entirely or a different man in this man, arising and coming into purpose and being the husband that you want to be, you have to become a different woman. That's the truth. So it's either going to come up or I'm going to ship out. So you have to do the work. Speaking to the wives specifically now, you have to do the growth work. You have to get into the word. The word is not just marital scriptures that apply to marriage. When it said take the beam out of your eye, it was meant for the rest of the church except the married people. And when we look into another translation, it speaks about the sawdust as against the plank. Look at the sawdust, left the man sawdust, and work on your plank, because it's going to take a lot more effort to chip down the plank than it is to take out the sawdust out of your husband's eyes or your wife's eyes. And so, begin to look to God. Begin to bring those expectations and those unmet needs, those unmet expectations, take them to God and say, God, this is it. This is all that I was desiring, because we would have brought some of these things out of, our family of origins. We didn't get it from our parents. So here it is that we're wanting our spouses to do this and to fill all of these gaps in us. Take these gaps to God. Begin to say, God, you need to fill me up. You need to fix me. You need to, do the work. As I said before, I'm doing foundational work, and it's not just my personal self, because I've been doing that for a while, but really dealing with some of the generational stuff. So be busy about that. Commit at least a length of time for 2024. It's going to be me work. Leave the marriage. Don't touch the marriage. Once you begin to work on yourself, the marriage will automatically begin to come. Things will begin to fall into place. And don't give up you need support outside of your husband, outside of the home. You need, especially if you're a mother, find support systems. That's why we have the Labor Free Wives community. Yes. Right? We offer accountability. Right now, the Lord will have told us for the last 3 months, get into the word, get wives to begin to build strategic, consistent prayer lives. Because when you are going through those struggles, you don't want to pray. You don't want to be in the word. Some persons are depressive. Some persons, we're going out on the 17th. It's just wives going out on the town to enjoy yourself. Your husband not taking you anywhere, and you're not going away because he not carry me. Yeah. No. We're moving away from all of these things, and we're recognizing that God is dealing with us as all persons, right? He says everybody will have to work out their own salvations. It means that you will have to give an account for what God has given to you. When you come, it's either well done, because you would have stewarded what he would have given to you so well, or you will be called the wicked servant. So whilst you're going through all of these difficulties and all of the challenges that comes with marriage, and that is why the Truth Uprooted podcast is here to shed light on these things and to help you to recognize that you are not alone in this space. So we are also making ourselves available. You can always reach out. We are asking for your feedback. Yes. And we will do our very best to ensure that we are able to offer you support as best as possible. As to social media, I am most places. I am TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. right?
And that
So
would
you're
be
able
Label-Free Wives.
Labor-Free Wives on YouTube as well. There's a lot of free resources
Yes.
there that you can benefit from. I'm a little bit unconventional, but nevertheless, you can choke the meat and spit out the bone.
Yes.
But there's a lot there that you can benefit from. And the other platforms, it's Nicole Kenwood, Nicole A. Kenwood, Nicole Kenwood Brown. Any of those.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And you can reach out to us as well on YouTube through the chat, or even our website at truthuprooted.com, or you can email us as well at truthuprooted@gmail.com. Listen, this was lovely. I suspect that we're going to have a part 2, but until then, you need to subscribe if you have not already done so. Please, please, please. And as we like to say, it's a real talk for a straight walk. God bless you.
Truth uprooted, nothing.
Thank you for tuning in to the Truth Uprooted podcast. Join us again next week for another thought-provoking conversation. As we say, real talk for a straight walk.
Around. You are now tuned into Truth Uprooted, real talk for a straight walk.